Hello guys, welcome back. I hope everyone is doing great. So in today's video, I'm catching up with the house of Amouage. I have had samples sitting around for months, and I also purchased samples of fragrances in the men's line that I have been meaning to get my nose on for the longest time. So we have here a lineup of 5 fragrances. I'm going to quickly go through them, talk about what they smell like, and then in the end, I will share the one that I would love to have a full bottle of. And we're going to start with one that's, I think, pretty popular from the men's line. This is a decant of Reflection Man, which was released in 2007. I know that there's a flanker, Reflection, is it 25? It's one of the extras, but I have not gotten my nose on that one. This is just the regular Reflection Man. And I think it's a pretty popular one from the house of Amouage. And I think that a lot of women enjoy this as well. So it's one of those that's considered pretty unisex. And I do agree with that. I do think that it's unisex, although there is a little something about this that I think could lean just a little bit masculine for me personally. But I do see how women like this as well. So what you have here is a clean scent profile. It's considered a fresh, floral, woody fragrance with powdery nuances. It's considered fresh and clean, but what I love about this is that it's not a fresh fragrance that's dependent on zesty citruses. So you have neroli and jasmine, and I think there's rose and ylang ylang. But I do think that the composition is focused on the neroli, and I think there's petitgrain in here. So yes, I do get floral nuances and hints, but I think this is all about the neroli, the freshness, the green aspects that come along with the neroli. And then there's a note of rosemary, so there's an aromatic component in here as well. It's really nice. I can see a clean-shaven man wearing this. I can also see a woman wearing it as a fresh fragrance. It's not very floral. And then you have the woods, the cedar wood, and I think there's sandalwood in the base with some patchouli that sort of adds to this fresh scent profile. And you have more than just a fresh, clean fragrance. So I think that's why something like this, even though it's pretty simple, I think in its simplicity, it's really well made. And it has just the right amount of everything. It has just the right amount of freshness. It has just the right amount of woody components. It has that aromatic hint. And it comes off like an elevated, refined, fresh fragrance that focuses on neroli. So it is very nice. And I do see why a lot of people like this. There's a little bit of sweetness in here, but nothing too sweet. But for me personally, there is an aromatic component that pulls a little bit masculine. So I would not add a full bottle to my collection, but I can see why a lot of people like this fragrance. Really nice, very well done, just the right amount of everything. The balance is just so, and it's smooth. It's elevated and it smells classy. So that's Reflection Man. So next, let's talk about one that was released in 2020. This is a little sample of Crimson Rocks. So this one focuses on rose, and I have a bladder here that was pre-dipped. This one is about an hour into the dry down, so I am going to go and put some on skin. So I've tried these before, and Crimson Rocks, if I'm being honest, is not really one that I am too crazy about. So this one focuses on rose, and in the opening, it is quite bold and rich and synthetic. I think it's very syrupy and synthetic smelling to my nose. So I do get rose, but I get a lot of cinnamon in here, and it's thick. I feel like the rose is honeyed. I feel like there's a sweetness and a syrupy sort of consistency that comes along with this rose that has a lot of spice to it from the cinnamon, and I think there's pink pepper in here. And as it dries down, I feel like the intensity of the rose diminishes as the woods come in. I think there's cedar wood and oak wood in here. So what you're left with in the end is a rosy fragrance with woods and this honeyed aspect that seems maybe a little bit syrupy. The fragrance itself feels thick, syrupy, and bold, and a little bit synthetic, if I'm being honest. In the dry down, it's more of a woody fragrance with a rosy component, if that makes sense, and a syrupy consistency. And it's compared to Christian Dior's Ambre Nuit, which I love, and I can see the similarities. I can see that it hints at something like that, but Ambre Nuit is much, much more refined. I think it's much smoother. It's round around the edges. It doesn't have that thickness and that synthetic quality that this one has. So it's not a bad fragrance. I don't hate it, but I don't like the syrupy consistency. I don't like that it feels a little too thick, and I don't like that it feels a little bit synthetic. But if you like something like Ambre Nuit and you don't mind what I'm describing, and maybe you want something bolder and heavier, then maybe you should try this one. But this one is just not for me. So that's Crimson Rocks. So the next one is from 2020, and this one is Meander. I have an official sample here of Meander. And I tried this a few times. It reminded me of a couple of different things. The first time I tried it, it reminded me a little bit of one of the essences, Luster. And the second and third time, I started to realize that it reminds me of a few other things. And then when I was reading reviews, I realized that others were getting the same thing. Some hints of Gris Chanel from BDK, some hints of a Musk Milano fragrance called Lost Alice. So this one is nice. I like this one. And even though it does hint at that woody scent profile like Luster, I think that this one is a little bit more subdued. It's not as thick and sweet and synthetic smelling as Luster, in my opinion. So what you have here is a creamy sandalwood fragrance. There are little green hints in here. There's something that comes off almost a little bit boozy to my nose, but overall you have a creamy, cozy sandalwood warm fragrance. I would say that if I had to pick a color, it would be like a camel brown color. It's very cozy. And it does hint at Gris Chanel. It does, but this one has a little bit more substance to it. I feel like Gris Chanel is a little bit more watery. This one is a little bit thicker. It's a more substantial fragrance. There's a little bit more going on. I like Gris Chanel. I actually own a bottle of that one. And I think a scent profile like this is perfect for the fall because it's so cozy and it's enveloping. And this one is definitely creamy. And with this one, you have orris, and I think there's carrot in here as well. So there's something almost a little bit vegetal about the carrot, and it's really unique in the fragrance. As this dries down, I think you get hints of the carrot even more, and it hints at Musk Milano's Lost Alice, but I think it hints more at Gris Chanel from BDK. And I feel like the orris fruit in here, that creaminess from the orris fruit sort of brings the fragrance together. It sort of melds together the creaminess and the spices and the sandalwood. And like I said, you have that carrot in here. As it dries down, it becomes a little bit more prominent, and it gives something almost a little bit grainy to the fragrance, if that makes sense. And maybe it's not the most unique scent profile, but I actually really like the way this is done. There's nothing synthetic in here. There's nothing overly sweet. It's not too thick. It's very warm. It's enveloping. It's cozy. And there's something very creamy and smooth about how the fragrance comes off on skin. So if you like the idea of Gris Chanel and you want something maybe more intense, maybe more full-bodied, maybe a little bit more interesting, then you should try Meander. I think this is really nice. Again, maybe not the most unique, but I think it's really well done. I like that it's not sweet. I like that it's not synthetic smelling. It's definitely an enveloping, creamy sandalwood scent profile with a touch of something special from the orris butter and the carrot, which is giving something a little bit interesting in here. So that's Meander. So the next one is from the Opus collection, and this one is an official sample of Opus V. Now, this is one of those fragrances that was in the original library collection, those big bottles that were placed on stands. I have a few of them. This was part of that lineup, and it was one of the fragrances that made it to the repackaging. Some of them were discontinued, some that a lot of us love. So this one was repackaged, and I think it comes in a lavender colored bottle. So let's spray this one. I love iris fragrances, and I had high hopes for this one. And I've had this on skin a few times as well. So this one, despite the note listing for this fragrance, is actually a very, very subdued fragrance. There's a rum note in here, there's jasmine, there's rose listed as notes as well. There's oud and there's civet, and then there's orris concrete and orris absolute. So I'm not really getting anything boozy, even though there's a rum note in here, and I'm not getting anything oudy, even though there's oud listed, and I'm not getting anything animalic, even though there's civet listed in the note listing. What I do get is a very, very subdued, mild fragrance. The iris in here seems to be very earthy. It's not the type of iris that I would describe as powdery or lipsticky or feminine in any way. It's very unisex. I feel like it's a very earthy, sort of soft iris fragrance, maybe a little bit rooty. And like I said, I'm not getting anything boozy, although I do get the woods in here, and I feel like they're a little bit sharp. It's this sharp contrast that I feel like might be coming from the woods against the iris that is not something that I'm really enjoying in this fragrance. So I wasn't really sure what to make of this. I got this sample months ago, and I could not wait to get this on skin. I love iris fragrances, and this one was a little bit of a disappointment. It is soft and delicate, and yes, it is iris, but there's something in here contrasting the iris that I'm just not enjoying. I'm not getting the rose or the jasmine. It's just part of the, I guess, floral aspects in the fragrance. It's not a fragrance that's necessarily floral. Again, it's very unisex to my nose. And to me, in the dry down, I feel like it turns into a fragrance that's a little bit more about the woods than it is about the iris. So don't get me wrong, there is iris in here that's detectable, and I get that it's an iris fragrance and it's soft like a lot of iris fragrances can be. It depends how it's done. So I do get that sort of softness from the iris, but I do feel like the woods take over in the dry down. And it's a very, very subdued fragrance. I had a hard time detecting it on skin after about an hour or two. So this one was just not a love for me. Even though I love iris, I had high hopes for this one. So that's Opus V. And last but not least is the one that I do want a full bottle of eventually. This is Dia Man. And I have here the blotter that's been pre-dipped about an hour or so ago. This is so stunning. It is absolutely beautiful. This is Amouage that takes you on a journey. It opens very differently than it does in the dry down. I will say that I had to wear this on skin a few times to get to know this fragrance. The first time I felt that I really could smell nothing and I thought nothing of it. The second time I realized the nuances in the fragrance, and by the third time that I wore it on skin, I realized the journey that this fragrance takes you on, even though it's a simple scent profile. Now, I love Dia Woman. Dia Woman is one of those fragrances that I have a backup bottle for, and I specifically searched for an older bottle, and I always describe it as fine soap. It's very elegant. It's a little bit vintage leaning. It's aldehydic, and it's just stunning, in my opinion. I love that fragrance. And I feel like Dia Man is totally wearable for me personally as a woman. So I think it's totally unisex. And I think it's the perfect counterpart to Dia Woman, both of them being beautiful, beautiful, elegant scent profiles. So I've done enough talking. I am going to put this on skin and we're going to talk about what it smells like in the opening and how this dries down, because I love how this dries down and how it changes. It's very, very elegant. And I'm not sure about reformulations. I saw an older bottle that's quite expensive, so I may just go ahead and purchase whatever the new formulation for Dia is, and then maybe in the future search for an old bottle. It is so elegant and smooth and round, very, very smooth and round. There is nothing rough about this fragrance. So to me, in the opening, I'm getting the iris with the frankincense and the florals in here. There are some other florals in here. I feel like they're very nondescript and they're just sort of part of the fragrance. And I would say that it is a clean scent profile. And even though it's a clean scent profile, it's not a zesty clean. It's not a citrusy clean. It's a clean that comes from a beautiful sort of smooth iris. Maybe it's a little powdery. Maybe there's something a little bit soapy in there, but it doesn't overtake. You have a hint of spice from cardamom in here. It sort of warms the fragrance. It's warming. And I just love how all the notes sort of meld together to give you this very sophisticated, beautiful fragrance. I feel like it is a woody, floral, sort of clean scent profile, but I do feel that the iris plays a big role in here. So I would consider this a sort of clean scent profile with powdery nuances that come from florals that are nondescript. And I think it does have a focus on iris, and I love in the dry down how I start to get the ambery components and that leathery sort of texture. Beautiful in the dry down. So this fragrance is magical in the dry down, in my opinion. And the way that sort of smooth ambery base with that very, very fine leather reminds me a little bit of vintage style fragrances. I have a very old bottle of Cuir de Russie from Chanel, and it is so different from the birch, smoky sort of leather that you get in the Cuir de Russie in today's formulation. That vintage bottle, I think it's from the 70s. I feel like I get a different type of leather that's just so smooth, and I get the same sort of leather in the base here. It's really, really stunning. I like this a lot. I see this on a classy man. I see this on a classy woman. I just feel like it is such an elevated, classy, smooth fragrance. I would love to add a full bottle to my collection. It's one of those fragrances that I think is super versatile. I feel like I could dress it up and it would be elegant, but at the same time, I would have no problem wearing something like this on a daily basis to work. I really like this. It's a stunning fragrance, and I hope to add a bottle to my collection at some point soon, or maybe in the future. I may have to wait. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of these Amouage fragrances. And as always, thank you so much for watching, your support, and your comments. Until next time, bye guys.